So our first panel will come and take the stage now, and I'm pleased to get the lay of the land from a couple of national experts this afternoon. I will be welcoming to the stage Lindsey Henderson, who is the Policy Director for Mathematics at ExcelinEd and also formerly of the Utah State Board of Education, who will talk to us about trends in policy. And also Katey Arrington will be joining us. And Katey is the Director of Systemic Transformation at the University of Texas at Austin, the Charles A. Dana Center, who will be helping us to make the case for systems change when it comes to implementing math policy. Without any further ado, I invite Lindsey to the stage first, and then, come on, and then Katey will follow her. A math person, I assume.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Lindsey Henderson, and I am the Math Policy Director for a national nonprofit called ExcelinEd. My favorite thing to do in the entire world is to talk about my cats and to talk about math. So I am just thrilled to be here today. Superintendent Mackey did not know that I had this, but I brought it with me. And I'm so excited to share that we have at ExcelinEd done a lot of research, and we have dived into that report from the final report of the National Mathematics Advisory Panel, and we have come up with the policy conditions that it takes to improve mathematics, especially in the K-8 space. And the reason we're focused on K-8 is because K-8 is the mathematics that is essential for everybody. It is the building blocks that students, I always say it's not rocket science yet, but it's the building blocks towards those STEM degrees, towards engaged citizenship, towards every opportunity that you can think of in life. So I want to talk a little bit about the why behind our policy set. Our why is to create a system where all students can see themselves in K-8's mathematical spaces as math people. It is so important, and it's tied to lifelong learning outcomes and tons of evidence that shows that there's economic opportunity tied to especially early math gains. And so what we are doing is we are making spaces where all kids can achieve mathematical excellence and can be seen as math people. So I want to dive into some of our evidence-based policy solutions. It's going to be a little bit repetitive from what you've already heard, because it comes from this report that was published in 2008. We have had this for almost 20 years, and yet very little attention has been paid to it. So let's move to our ExcelinEd's policy solutions. We have 6 buckets that we call fundamental principles. High quality instructional materials. It turns out that kids need access to grade level math, and a great way to do that is through HQIM. Educator supports. We need to tighten up pre-service teacher training and in-service teacher training, and we need to keep everybody learning and on the same page about those evidence-based ways to accelerate mathematical learning in the classroom. Assessments. I always say it's not the test that's the magic, it's when teachers have access to the data. Because a high leverage practice is knowing what your kids know and knowing where there might be a spot that you need to intervene. And part of assessments is requiring intervention. We all have highs and lows when we learn things. It is important that students know that during the lows, there's an adult there that is going to help them reach mathematical excellence and fill in gaps and correct misunderstandings. Core instructional time. Did you know that one of the biggest recommendations from the National Math Advisory Panel was to have an uninterrupted daily block of time to teach and learn mathematics? Turns out it's really important. Families and caregivers, they are our most underutilized resource. And I love to leverage families and caregivers because it opens up line of communication and builds trust between teachers and families. But at the same time, there's a huge responsibility when we're talking with our families and caregivers, because no family will say math is not important, right? Everybody thinks math is important. But in the same breath, they'll say, but I'm not a math person. So in addition to communicating with our families and caregivers, we're also helping them to see that they can be mathematically resilient as well and help their child succeed at mathematics. Our last policy recommendation, is access to advanced math coursework when students are mathematically ready. And we'll talk a little bit more about these in kind of the state of math policy across the nation. So one of my first projects that I took on at ExcelinEd was to do a scan. Those are our evidence-based policy solutions. What's happening in states? We have those 6 fundamental principles, and we have 15 indicators that fit in under those different buckets. These 3 states lead the nation in having at least half of the 15 indicators. That's 7.5 if you're doing the mental math in your head. They have 7.5 of our policy recommendations enacted, and they're actively working to implement them. And actually, I had to change the Maryland color just this morning, because yesterday they passed a huge math plan unanimously through their board. Hey, it gets a little bit brighter when you look at some math policies, so that's less than half of our 15 recommendations, but more than a third. And then states who are working on math policy this legislative session colors the map even more. The great news is there exists a national opportunity for every state to attack math policy. So let's start with some highlights, shall we? The wonderful state of Alabama. Alabama Numeracy Act passed in 2022, 2 years ago, just 2 short years ago. It is comprehensive. And I want to take a little bit of time and talk about the way that you enact policy is really important. Instead of piecemealing these different things together, a comprehensive approach is really great to give everybody in the system the tools that they need to be successful. Alabama did that with our Numeracy Act in 2022. And the reason I wanted to highlight their Numeracy Act is because they are the only state that says in policy that you have to teach math for 60 minutes every single day. Isn't that amazing? Simple way to get kids access to grade level mathematics. Okay. Alabama has shown great strides in those 2024 NAEP results that were released just a few months ago. And I took notes so I would not get it wrong. They are, in 4th grade math, they are back to above pre-pandemic proficiency. It's one of 2 states that has achieved that accomplishment. They've also moved up in the rankings from 39th in 4th grade math on NAEP, and now they are at 31st. 8 spots up that they have jumped. Wonderful work. Okay, the next state that I'd like to spotlight is Indiana. The wonderful state of Indiana is poised to be one of the first states who's going to pass comprehensive math policy in this legislative session. It has tons of things in this math bill, including advanced math, automatic enrollment in advanced math. It has universal screeners, and it tightens up teacher preparation programs so that everybody's equipped with the skills and the knowledge they need to teach mathematics. Their screener program is very comprehensive. It requires screening of students K-8, which is really important for mathematics every single year in the pipeline. And it requires results given back to teachers within 30 days and requires parental notification as well of the screeners. And then beyond that, if a student has a red flag where there might be a misconception or a misunderstanding, teachers are required to intervene with a math plan. And they're also required to bring parents along and give them resources so that parents can help their students succeed at home. Huge shout out to Indiana for being one of the first states this legislative session to tackle math. Kentucky, 2024, passed legislation that is very comprehensive, and it's being rolled out over several years, which I think is a fantastic approach. I wanted to spotlight them because they have a robust educator support in their bill. They have invested heavily in math coaches. And if I could talk for hours about how wonderful math coaches are to have at every school who teaches mathematics, Wonderful resource to have for teachers, for administrators, for students. They build rapport with teachers. They give instant feedback on how the teaching is going. They can be relied upon to lead professional development in the evidence-based best practices for teaching math. Just a wonderful resource. And Kentucky has started a cadre of math coaches, and they're growing their own, it's kind of a grow your own program. So they start with the high flyers, and they add people every single year, and then they leverage the stars to be math coaches of math coaches, and really create a comprehensive system of educator support for the state of Kentucky. So huge shout out to Kentucky. Okay, Maryland. They just passed a comprehensive math plan yesterday, unanimously in their board, and it is K-12, which is amazing. It includes things like high-quality instructional materials. They have a very evidence-based framework for identifying what does it mean to be a high-quality instructional material for math in the state of Maryland. Next steps, the development of a rubric, the development of a process, and then getting information out to their schools. We hope to see Maryland incentivizing the adoption of high-quality instructional materials by the schools in their state. And I think they're well on their way to doing that with their math bill that they passed yesterday. I wanted to talk a little bit about how comprehensive Maryland's approach was. In this math plan, they moved to a 2-year high school integrated algebra sequence. They eliminated exclusionary tracking practices. They have automatic enrollment in advanced math. They set a minimum daily instructional time, much like Alabama, to teach mathematics every day. And they have structured interventions and additional time for students who need support. One of the most innovative things is in high school, they've expanded access to different math pathways, and they have options such as quantitative reasoning, data analytics, algebra, foundations of calculus, and statistics and probability. Wonderful work by the state of Maryland for mathematics. Hey, the final highlight that I'd like to talk about is North Carolina. North Carolina, since 2018, has had an automatic enrollment in advanced math policy. One of the recommendations in the final report of the National Math Advisory Panel was about Algebra 1. Students should take Algebra 1 when they're mathematically ready. Automatic enrollment in advanced math starts in middle school and looks at a student's end-of-level math scores, takes the top quartile of students who perform, so we're talking the proficient and highly proficient students, and automatically enrolls them in advanced math so that they can have Algebra 1 in 8th grade because they're demonstrating their readiness on the end-of-level exam. North Carolina has had, this bill was unanimously approved, and it was bipartisan. It seemed to be a no-brainer for a lot of the politicians in North Carolina. And in the years since 2018, it's shown huge gains for students to have access to advanced math coursework in middle school. And even in high school, students are taking multiple college credit-bearing math courses like AP, IB, dual, and concurrent enrollment. So we're improving access, and they have shown that it's good for all students who perform well on that top quartile of the end-of-level test, but it shows particular gains in access for underrepresented communities in mathematical spaces, students from low socioeconomic households, and students who are ethnically and racially diverse. Huge kudos to North Carolina. Right. I'm going to leave you with a few resources. We have tons of information on our website about these evidence-based policies. More than willing to talk more about them. I always like to say that policy is the first step towards improvement of a system. The next step is the implementation of that policy. And that is where my good friend and colleague, Dr. Arrington, comes in. So I'd like to welcome her to the stage.
Thanks, Lindsay. Hello, good afternoon. I am Katey Arrington, and I am the Director of Systemic Transformation at a place called the Charles A. Dana Center at the University of Texas at Austin. I am just so excited to be here with this group of people, thinking together about improving the experience of students in their math education and this goal of creating a nation of problem solvers. I'm excited to think about the key state levers with you, but also to provide a systemic change lens. Since this is my job, right? It's in my title. I'm excited to talk to you about systemic change. So I'll tell you a little bit about the Dana Center. We exist to try and create change in the education system to make sure every single student gets to see the relevance and the purpose in their education, but also to really think about the joy and the power that comes from math education, for them to feel that, for them to see that. We think a lot about transforming the educational system. Now, systemic change is about solving big, meaty problems, right? Systems are complex. They've got lots of moving parts, and every time we tweak one piece of a system, we have to think about how that's going to impact other portions of the system. So it takes a lot of strategic thinking. A good example, and actually when we try to solve systemic problems with simple solutions, we often make the problem worse. An example of this, prohibition. In the 1920s, we were having a problem with alcoholism. What was the solution? Ban alcohol. Don't think about why people are alcoholics, just ban alcohol. Well, can we talk about the results of that? Tons of states lost very valuable funds from taxes. Lots of people lost their jobs. Alcohol manufacturers, deliverers, people in bars who served alcohol, restaurants, government workers because of the tax fundings going down, right? It did not actually solve the alcohol problem. It actually increased the alcohol problem because of everything else that happened. If we're thinking about a transportation system, if we're a city manager and there's a problem with the bus lines, the solution might not actually be with the bus lines at all. It might be with the train lines or the traffic patterns. So with systemic change, we have to think big and think about all of the different gears and how they work together. If you're in a school system and you're implementing high-quality instructional materials and they're not working as well as you want them to, it might not have anything to do with those materials. It might have to do with the things around them. And so that's why it's important that we think about change when we're thinking about these important policies that Lindsey brought to us, not just as the policies and the practices and the resource flows, right? Change in policy is incredibly important. We need to make that happen. We need to put those structures in place. But we cannot assume that a change in policy is going to fix the problem. We have to really think about all of the different parts of the system. If I change this policy, what other policies need to change to support it? What are the other structures in connected ways? But we also have to think about systems being made up of people. And we have to think about the relationships that are within that system. Who has the power to really make these changes happen? What are the interactions between people and departments? And how do they need to change? What are the expectations that we have for each and every person in the system? And how do we make that match what we want to happen? And then also, really, what are the mindsets? Mindsets undergird everything we do. If I believe a certain thing, I'm going to make my behaviors match that mindset. And so if we're really looking to make change, Superintendent Mackey started off by saying, having all of us say, we are math people, right? But to make change in our system for math education, we have to look at every single one of our students also, as every one of them is a math person. So, just as an example, one of our projects at the Dana Center is really focused on this problem. About a decade ago, we realized that we had a problem in high school and entering college with course sequences presenting barriers to students. Barriers that kept them from their opportunity, that kept them from their goals, these math course sequences. It's because math is seen as a difficult topic. Not everybody's really excited about taking math, although I hope that's changing. But our courses that we were requiring were not aligned to their aspirations. They didn't see them as relevant. So not only was it difficult, but it wasn't aligned to what they wanted to do. It was having a big impact on persistence. And not just in STEM careers, nursing shortages. A lot of that was because of the math that was required for them to take. So this is a big problem, and we've been working on it. We have some big ideas. We think every student should get modern math that's aligned with their career aspirations. In some cases, that's going to be the algebraically intensive calculus pathway. But for nurses and journalists, they need statistics. They need math, it's just not calculus, right? For folks who are going into business and hospitality, they need great quantitative reasoning. We can give them that. We need to. Oh, I don't know how that happens. We need to make sure that the transitions across our systems are working for students. We need to make sure that we're using effective student supports, and we need to increase access to and success in math so that we're increasing program completion. These are big goals, and they require systemic thinking. In case you're wondering, this is the map of the states that are officially involved in launch years right now. There are a couple other states, Ohio and Texas, who are leaders in this space as well, who we work closely with. And we have almost 5 other states that are thinking about joining, applying to join in the next year. So this is a big topic. It's a big thing. It's taking off. But I think it's because we did a lot of intentional design to think about this from a systemic change lens, right? We did think about structural changes. If we're talking about courses, the course successions being what's causing problems, of course we need change there. But we also need to think about change in admissions policies and placements policies. We need to think about how we're allocating our resources to best support our students. We also need to explicitly address relational change. If we want students to make solid transitions from K-12 to higher ed, we've got to have those people working together, which doesn't always happen, right? So we've got to get them talking to each other, working together. We've got to think about who has the power to make decisions and make shifts there if that's what's causing a problem. So as you're thinking today about big changes for your system, I would love it if you thought about structural changes and relational changes. But I think the thing that undergirds all of this is really working explicitly on mindset shifts. Math is becoming more and more vital, and we for too long have seen math as only for some. So we are all math people. Every one of our students is a math person too. They just might not need calculus. They might need statistics or quantitative reasoning. And they need automatic enrollment, and they need high quality instructional materials and all of those key levers that we talked about. But think about these 3 aspects as you're putting your plans together. In case you're interested, in the example I gave with our Launch Years initiative, we will have a new report coming out. If you want to get on the list for that, you can scan this, or you can just email me. My contact information is there. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.